Greetings, welcome to Pod by Nyame. I'm your guide and host, Kwesi Kunadu. On this episode, we're going to talk about forgiveness. Now, let me first begin with what is forgiveness and what is not forgiveness, and then we'll get into the ultimate and even immediate benefits of doing so and how to do so properly. So, what is forgiveness? Well, forgiveness is the act, it is the conscious, that is intentional act of coming to terms with someone or something that has hurt or harmed you. And there is no statute of limitation for forgiveness, right? For the most part. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. For the most part, unlike, let's say, a murder or rape or other heinous crime, but that has statute of limitations, meaning a certain given time in which you can prosecute or deal with that particular offense. With forgiveness, there isn't one, with one important caveat that I'll share with you in this video. So, forgiveness is, once more, the conscious, intentional act of coming to terms with the person or the something that hurt or harmed you in a way that you have been holding on to it and have not let go of it, right? So, forgiveness is about ultimately letting go. It's about but how to let go. Some people think wrongly that forgiveness is simply about forgetting. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Yes, they begin with the first same letter, but beyond that, there are two different worlds. You see, forgetting is a function of memory, whereas forgiveness is a act of consciousness, meaning not forgetting. And so, forgiveness is not about forgetting nor condoning the particular act of the person or persons or thing that hurt or harmed you. Forgiveness is also not about reconciling. When I say coming to terms, it's not about reconciling with that person or trying to get back to a certain, relationship with that person. It's about none of that. In fact, that person, you need not have any contact with that person in order to forgive. And so, because forgiveness is this very conscious, intentional act that has nothing to do with forgetting or giving someone an opportunity for them to claim or to own that they hurt or harmed you. None of that. So, with forgiveness and with it being more about this conscious, intentional act of coming to terms of letting go, of releasing that particular hurt and pain and harm that was done to you by someone or something, then let me share with you how forgiveness works by way of, example. So, I spent 30 years, yes, 3 decades, trying to come to terms with my biological father, my earthly father. And as I've shared with you in previous videos, the people for whom you are related by birth, marriage, or adoption, that is your family, are not often your real family. In other words, I and somebody else, or you and somebody else, can come out of the same womb, and biologically you are related by blood as brothers and sisters or siblings, but in true fashion and form, you two could be from totally different worlds. And this is why, for instance, siblings sometimes are at each other's throats, and not because of any rivalry, so-called, but because they two are two different kinds of people that just so happen to come through the same portal, that is the womb, through the same woman or mother. Um, and that's about it. That's where the relationship starts and that's where the relationship ends. And so the idea here is that you can have people with whom that you are related to and have nothing, in common with, nothing to do with each other in terms of why you were here and what you're supposed to do here. That said, forgiveness for me in the 30-year journey was about trying to come to terms with this biological father of mine. Yes, he provided the sperm that provided the sort of, the vehicle that physically, humanly got me here. But beyond that, I came to realize after 30 years that there was nothing else there. And This was a lesson that was very important, while all the while difficult to reconcile. Why so? Because ultimately, I had to learn to forgive him for his lack of presence, his lack of being a man, a real man, being a father, his cruelty towards my mother, and much more that I won't get into. But you can get an idea, of his full resume from these snippets. And so, trying to reconcile with him being my biological father, and we're supposed to have this relationship again. These were assumptions I had, and having to learn, in another route, another way, that my journey with him over 3 decades was about forgiving him. And ultimately, we had a chat while I was, on the phone with him, and I think one or two other people. And I just told him that, I don't hate you. And I really don't. In my heart, my deepest soul, I don't at that point and even now. But I wasn't fully there yet. It took sometimes around, I think it was this year, this calendar year, early this calendar year, that I fully, forgave him. And even though my particular forgiving came through, meeting with him one on one, yours doesn't have to work that way. But mine happened to work out that way, whereby it wasn't the one on one, was what happened after the one on one. I left that one on one, feeling, that I got what I needed to get. I got the sort of the closure to the effort on my part of 30 years of trying to have a relationship with this person that clearly didn't want that, and has simply tried to use me as much as I tried to use him. By using, I mean getting to know this person so that I can, come to terms, for my own, benefit, for my own healing, for the benefit of my own children and grandchildren, which I don't have yet, but I'm thinking in those terms. And so it wasn't the conversation one on one. It was afterwards that I began to just to let him go out of my heart and soul, let go of the hurt, of him not being there, let go of the hurt. Even after 30 years of trying, we're back at where we were at the beginning of that 30-year period. And so that was more the confirmation my soul needed to have. My soul needed to, let go. And when it did, I felt absolutely nothing. And this is something that you will begin to also feel as well, is that you almost feel not numb, not stoic, not, jaded or resentment. No, those kinds of feelings do not come into the equation. What I felt, and I think what you would feel as well, is this sort of calm and peace, where if he's discussed or if he's mentioned or if he calls, and really he does, I'm not moved by it. I'm sort of like this calm in the proverbial storm. I'm not moved. And that kind of peace, that kind of resolve, I couldn't buy, I couldn't purchase, 30 years ago. So it took me that time, because that's my particular path, because this person is someone that certainly had an impact, on my well-being. And that's what forgiveness is about. It's about, you know, making sure that you have done everything on your part for your well-being. So forgiveness is not about that person. It wasn't my biological father. It was about my well-being, my healing, my health. And once I got to the point of just forgiving him, which means letting him out of my heart, and by him, I don't mean physically him, obviously. I mean the pain, the hurt, all the feelings attached to him, letting that go. And that letting go, that release point, came after that conversation as I walked, to the car, and I drove home and just sat back with it. And I cried, not because I missed him or I wanted to have another meeting, which I didn't and I don't, but it was those tears of release. And at that point, that's when my circle became full. And this is what forgiveness is about, right? Now, your journey doesn't have to be and should not be like mine, though it can have similarities or parallels. But what I'm saying to you is this is what, real health, wholeness, and wellness and healing looks and feels and has the sense, of it when it comes to forgiveness. And so, once more, forgiveness was a conscious act, meaning I've been working on this for 30 years. It's intentional. I'm trying to get to the point where I can release whatever I'm holding toward this man, toward this figure that has, been a ghost-like figure in my life, and only came, back into my life, or allowed him to come back into my life when he realized that I was a professor and I had a little bit of money and so on, right? And so even then, I gave him opportunities after opportunities, to do right and to do well, and everything just went back to square zero as we first started. And so that was the confirmation I needed, that the forgiveness circle had become full, and the tears was the consummating point that ensured that, yes, you have let go of all that. And in doing so, I am a better person, better man, and better, soul, because I have one, less hole. Some people have potholes, one less hole or injury or scar in my soul that is healed, and that is, healthy, and that is more whole than when it was 30 years ago. And this is one of several benefits, that come from forgiveness, right? My temperament, my mood, all the things have also benefited. In fact, they've been regenerated. In fact, you might say rejuvenated, from this. Because I am a father myself, and so carrying that load over those years, I'm sure weighed on my relation with my older children, that is my daughters, in ways that perhaps I have not fully realized or recognized. And for that, obviously, I owe them an apology for, anything that did not go as planned or accordingly, to them, but it's no excuse, but certainly it is, on me, and I need to own that. And I own that publicly to you all and to them. And so the forgiveness journey that I went through can very much mirror if you have been through this already, or if you're going through this now, or you will go through this. Now, let me tell you what's at stake. What's at stake is that there's something worse than death. Yes, there's something worse than death. Dying is not the worst thing that can happen. In fact, the act of dying is, momentary, and in most cases, you don't really feel it, right? Because your soul can't feel it when it departs the body. Um, And so dying is not difficult, right? Dying is not as painful as we imagine it, but it's something worse than dying. What is that? It is that when a soul, when a spirit, that is the deepest part of you, the real part of you, when this flesh and matter, goes back to, dust or ashes or whatever the phraseology is, right? That soul of yours won't be able to leave this earth, won't be able to go back home. um, and therefore it will be, and for some of us, who don't have a soul, who are negative or demonic in nature, and they don't have a soul, therefore they have to worry about this. For those of us that do have a soul, this is important, because that soul, even if you have not, committed crime or wickedness, it won't be able to go back home, not because of any, grand transgression, but because you haven't forgiven the people you need to forgive. The moments, the something, the someones, who hurt or harmed you, you're still holding on to it. You're still hiding it. You're still in denial of it. And that will disbar you, from going back home. Again, you don't have to commit any heinous crime, right? Your resume can be spotless and clean. Your criminal record can be spotless and clean. But there's something worse than dying. That is not having a soul that can return home. And for those, who, are, criminal, not only toward your own soul and toward other people's soul, in terms of your hurt and pain that you have caused and ruined, there is something worse than than death, right? And so, um, forgiveness is really the most simplest, but sometimes the most difficult thing to do when it comes to really healing yourself, but it's one of the most wonderful things to do. And I can be as my own testimonial to you, that this is very much doable, and it's very much real, and it's very much necessary. And so I'll leave you on this note. Over the past 3 years, maybe 2 years to be exact, I have forgiven a cousin, that attempted, to engage in some, sexual act with me that I wanted no part of. I had no part to do with it, but I remembered it, and I hadn't dealt with it, with him. So I confronted him, right? I also dealt with an aunt who lives in Brooklyn, and she, for 37 years, I've been wrestling with her because of what she has done, the harm and hurt she has caused to my mother, my siblings, and much more. The wickedness that has come through that person and unleashed upon not only my mother, myself, and others, and so it took me 37 years to forgive this person, and in doing so, I feel great, wonderful, and the rest, my friends, is on them. They have to answer for it. They have to pay for it, and not you. And so, why allow your soul to pay for someone else's crime by holding on to it? Papa Nyame, I've been your guide and host. Please put your comments, questions, experiences in the section below. Until next time, stay well.